Good morning, and this is Cynthia Hammer. I'm the director of Find the ADHD Girls, and today I'm pleased to introduce you to Sarah Kesty. She was a school teacher who learned how valuable executive function skills were for her students, and now she's become a trainer to teachers of executive function. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, Cynthia.
I know from what we talked about before that you say that executive functions can be taught, but I wanted to ask why are children with ADHD thought to not have executive function skills?
It's tricky. It's a brain hardware and software things. We know that brain with ADHD has some maybe neurotransmitter differences and then some structural differences. It's not necessarily that people with ADHD don't have executive function skills. It's just maybe they're not growing in the same path and at the same rate that we would expect. What ends up happening is you're showing up in a biologically maybe 15-year-old body, but some of your executive function skills could even span all the way to a 12-year-old. If you think about a high school sophomore versus maybe a sixth or seventh grader, that's a big difference.
Just like we talk how they're often 2 to 3 years immature, you're saying that their executive function skills are immature as well.
Absolutely.
Do they catch up as an adults if they weren't specifically trained?
That's a tricky question. I would say yes and no. Some of the skills probably develop. And what we also see is you pick the realm that you're going to work in based on the skill set match for yourself. So some of the illumination of your executive function skill deficits isn't as bright when you get into the work world because you've chosen a space. But honestly, all brains, even neurotypical brains, will have executive function sore spots that we need to augment outside of ourselves or have personal rules that we function by. If it matters, write it down. If that's one of mine. It's just building that self awareness to know where you are and what naturally happens for your brain is really important. But your question also got to the heart of it. We need to teach these skills. We need to talk about them. We need to help students mindfully grow them.
And what you're highlighting is that we all can have some of the skills, but we're not equally good at all of them.
No way. That would be perfection. And I haven't met a perfect human yet.
How do you go about teaching executive function skills in the classroom?
Ooh, that's a great question. And it's a couple branches. You can directly teach them. And usually what that looks is an opening story or an example. I like the phrase, you know how XYZ is really tricky sometimes? Today, I want to teach you a couple ways to manage that. It can be just an invitation of, hey, here's a skill set or an idea. We're going to practice it together. And then I'm going to park it somewhere on my classroom wall for a visual reference because these needs will pop back up. You will need to remember how to backwards plan, or you will need visuals for organizing. You can definitely teach it, but there's also components of coaching it, talking to kids about it, or bringing it to the forefront so that we're all talking about what are your strategies for studying? How do you manage your attention?
The children on their own have ideas that they have already figured out on their own how to do something. That's where you get the best ideas.
That's exactly where you get the best ideas. They'll know about the apps before any of us older folk do, trust me.
We're not all helpless.
No, and I always say consult the experts, and the experts are our kids. They're the experts on themselves. They can tell you what they're experiencing, what they're struggling with. That's how you save time developing interventions or supports because you're not guessing what might help. Ask the kid.
What would you say are the main executive function skills a girl between 5 and 10 years old should have down pat, or the parent should be helping them on because these are things that are going to help them in school and in their lives? I don't think all of them are necessary when you're 5 to 10 years old.
You do not need to be able to manage huge chunks of reading or write a whole bunch of really detailed research. There are things that are not applicable, and it's appropriate that in that age range, you're not going to be planning meals or grocery shopping. So you're right, it's different. And the span of brain development around age 8 to 10 is when we start developing empathy and getting that sense of being able to step in other people's shoes. The first category of executive function skills that I thought of as really poignant for that 5 to 10-year-old age range is actually social based. Can girls girls or boys, manage to maintain the topic in a conversation? Can they have strategies to hold on when they're impulsive, either in action or in interrupting? Can they read the room to know what energy to bring? Our executive functions that really impact who you play with at recess, how your group work goes, what are your table mates like, how does your lunch conversation go? That bleeds into the social and even the academic experience of the classroom. So that probably wasn't what you were expecting.
I'm more shocked to think that social skills are executive function skills. Even as an adult with my impulsivity, I just thought it's something I need to slap my hand on.
No, not at all. There's loads of strategies to work on that.
One I've heard is you take a drink of water when you feel the need to speak and you're in a group and you really shouldn't. That's when you should take a sip of water.
I'll teach students to put an idea in their pocket so they have a physical thing to hold on to of, okay, I'm not going to interrupt. It's safe in my pocket. Sometimes when we impulsively interrupt, it's because the idea is so juicy and we don't want to lose it. We're just going to throw it out there before it dissolves in our brain. If you can put it in your pocket, there's a better chance that you have encoded it more strongly in your working memory so that you can pull it back up and say it.
I had that experience. I was on an interview the other day, and sometimes they'll ask a question, and I'll have the deer in the headlights look because nothing comes up. But then as the conversation goes on, I'm thinking of the things I've learned to just write it down. Just a few words is enough to bring back what the thought was that I was having trouble capturing.
You know what? I had it ready for us during our podcast, a little note and a pen just in case so that I could capture it. Being in the moment, being present in a conversation requires I have to manage my body, I have to manage the tone of my voice, I have to remember the next word in line or remember the components of your question. That's a huge tax on your working memory. There's a chance that a cool idea might slip in. And then if you have all the space taken up with just managing the right now, it might fall back out. It's a great idea to have your strategy to just to capture it in the moment.
Beyond that was if I get that idea, I get distracted by it. So then I'm away from the interview because I'm chasing that idea. Writing down a little bit was really helpful to me. I'm going to do that in the future. But then you have to remember to be prepared with your pencil and paper before you go into the interview.
And if you're doing a lot of interviews, might be like a index card is your pre-flight checklist. Plug in microphone, check lighting, grab a note and paper, that kind of thing that becomes this is how I roll. But
Yeah.
we can acknowledge you have to make the pre-flight checklist, which could take a couple iterances.
That pre-flight checklist, there was a physician who studied surgeons making errors in surgery, and he developed the checklist of them to do before they started with the whole team. He said the hardest part was getting the physicians to acknowledge that they needed it.
Wow.
I think that's true with some of us. We think, oh, we don't need to go. That's so silly. That's so juvenile. That's not necessary for an adult to do. And yet, once they did it, now it's like a practice at all the hospitals. Did we count the sponges? Have we anesthetized the patient? We have the right limb that we're operating on. These simple things, but it reduced surgical errors a great deal. You're saying that creating that pre-flight checklist for any task you do on a regular basis where you need preparation.
Absolutely. And what that looks like at home for kids is having a checklist of what they need to do to get ready for the morning or about how long those things take. Since ADHD causes time blindness, and kids generally don't have a good sense of time. You can do it by songs. It's about one song long for you to get dressed. That gives them like a 3 to 5 minute space. You can say a show. We have about a show's length of time, so 25 to 30 minutes to get ready for school. There are ways to talk about it and make that checklist or that flow or morning map based on references that make sense to kids.
They can feel internally how long it was to do a show. You're saying that's because they don't know what 30 minutes is, or that they have experienced sitting through a show so they know how long that is? Their body has a memory of it.
It's a little more concrete than saying 30 minutes. What is 30
Oh.
minutes? Does not guarantee that they will be on time because they had that reference, but it provides some structure to get into the rhythm of the morning.
We came to rely so much on our watches.
Yeah, and on clocks and on all of that. There's no shame in that. I think concretizing time is one of the principles of supporting executive function. Have clocks in every room. If your kid can't do the analog yet, do digital. Make it brain friendly where we're not guessing and we're not surprised by, oh no, I'm late, but more, okay, I
Uh,
have a handle on this.
I've heard there's a clock where it shows in a the red that's closing, getting smaller and smaller.
Mhm.
They show the passing of time. I set it for 15 minutes and they can see how it's getting smaller.
Time
Some
timer is the
uh,
brand, super popular, especially in classrooms.
teachers use that too, or is that something more for parents at home to know about?
It's both.
Time timer. Any other products that you think are helpful?
Ooh, good question. I would say don't lose hope if you've bought a planner that you think is really excellent and your kid doesn't glob onto it right away. There are loads of cool planners and there are loads of different brains. And sometimes it's just not a match. Lose hope that your kid will never have a work management system. Sometimes it ends up being a blend of digital and analog. Sometimes it ends up being voice notes that then they organize later. There's loads of ways.
Are you discovering that apps? I've seen podcasts of people saying what apps are really helpful for people with ADHD. I don't want to complicate my life with more apps, but I guess some find that's a helpful tool.
I've seen several students have different apps that they like. Anywhere that captures all of their ideas and helps them organize it is going to be great. There's a website called Goblin Tools or Goblin AI. You put in a task and then it can break it down for you into smaller steps, which is really helpful.
For social skills, what more could a parent do to help their daughter with social skills?
That is a great question. I would say previews and reviews. If I'm not sporty, but if you think about it like a game day where you have a pre-show and then the game and then the post-game wrap up, being open and available to talk about expectations, what activities you might do, what questions you might ask, preparing their brains before a social thing can be incredibly helpful. We're talking small things like a dance class all the way up to big things like a sleepover. And then the post game, this is where we have that whole trope that you learn from your mistakes. If nothing went wonky, we don't really talk to our kids about it. But regardless of the flavor of the social interaction, having a space to reflect is really important. That's where we can provide space for our super fast brains to slow down and make connections and say, okay, when I did this, it impacted me in this way. Or when I provided this, my friends really responded positively. It doesn't always have to be a negative of what went wrong, but what went right. What did you notice when you did this? How did you add to your friends file in your brain? Oh, you learned that Brooklyn liked tomatoes the best, and you didn't know that. We're adding that to her friend file, having that conversation about it so that it brings to light that socializing can take effort and be a mindful experience and can have some strengths and struggles and normalizing that. It's true for everyone.
Are you saying it, the parent can do that with the girl because she's not going to do it on her own? She's probably going to move on. But if the parent says, How did it go? What went particularly well? What are you happy about? Or who did you get to talk with that you didn't talk with? Pull out different aspects of how that activity went. Is that what you're saying they should do?
Absolutely. And if there was a strategy that they identified, okay, I'm going to step in the room and for the first 3 seconds, I'm going to listen to the volume and then I'm going to match my voice. It's just that's an example strategy. If that's what your daughter was testing out, then talking after you pick her up, after strategy go, just normalizing that it's common to need to adjust ourselves and read the room and have mindful ways to have social communication.
I encountered some of this with my son, but it was in a different aspect. When I used to take him to the grocery store with me, he would always be asking for this or that. I learned to tell him before we went into the store that he was not going to ask for things. But maybe that's the negative, but it did make a difference. And then afterwards, I could praise him. Then we got through the store without him nagging me.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Just making those expectations clear or knowing what to do instead. We're not in a behavior hole of, hey, stop wiggling, but I don't know what to do with all this energy. But offering, you can wiggle your fingers under the desk so it's not so wild, or go take a break to serve that need.
It just sounds like a lot more exploration, talking with your child more to know where they might be having difficulties and becoming aware. You're almost like their coach, helping them to figure out some new behaviors.
And discover what their brain responds well to. What's neuropositives for you? What really seems to work well? Wow, you got so locked in on that assignment when you exercised right before, or it seemed like you were pretty distracted when you had the show on in the background, or whatever it is to illuminate. Oh, this isn't random. I'm not a victim of struggling with studenting, or it's happenstance when my brain's on and off. I can impact the environment or my choices to make my social communication better or make my focus better or have a better time getting through the dreaded homework after school.
That ties so much into what I've been learning lately. I've written a book about it, not published yet, but it has a lot to do with the environment and how certain environments are better for people with ADHD and for them to figure out and try to create those environments for themselves as much as possible is going to help them function their best.
Absolutely.
Even becoming aware that they don't like fluorescent lights, but they do better with an LED light, or they don't like rock and roll music, they do better with classical music on in the background, or they do better in total silence. I prefer to be in total silence, where I know some other people, they prefer listening to binaural beats.
Some people are like, no, I need a familiar show that I've seen 100 times in the background because my brain won't scan the auditory environment for novelty. It's dulling that seeking of stimulation so that I can focus on other things.
Yeah, I'm in my little office by myself. If my husband comes stand at the door, I can't focus because he's standing there. I have to turn so I don't see him. But then other times people say body doubling helps them. I don't think body doubling would help me. I would feel uncomfortable.
We're all so different. I wonder if body doubling would help if you had to pack for a trip or do dishes or something that was physical to get your inertia going. Have you tried that?
I don't know. At this point, I feel like I am what I am. I've known about my ADHD for 33 years. I'm not saying I'm too old to learn a new trick, but I guess I've become comfortable with who I am, how I am.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that there aren't strategies available. You just know the broad categories of what might work for you.
Yeah. Sarah, thanks for taking the time to talk with us. I'm so glad you're teaching teachers about executive function skills, and our organization will take on the task of helping parents learn how they can teach their daughters executive function skills.
Absolutely. It was wonderful to be here. And it's funny you say that too, because in the book I wrote, it's for
It shows,
classroom growing executive function.
ah,
And I'm actually hearing a lot from parents who are like, I know you wrote this for teachers, but I'm just translating it to home. So maybe there's a second book on the way, but I'm glad, at least for now, that these resources are applicable and helpful for everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
We believe all girls with ADHD should get a fair start in life by getting diagnosed by age 8. Visit us at www.findtheadhdgirls.org. Thank you.